morning, everyone.
Morning.
We'd like to get started in just a minute or so, if everyone can find a seat. Well, good morning and welcome to the Financial Management Oversight Training. I'm Leanne Trainer, the Transit Program Manager for GDOT, and I welcome everyone today. We are very fortunate to have Mr. Rich Garrity from RLS and Associates as our instructor this morning. Rich comes to the course with 43 years in rural transit. That is quite an accomplishment. He spent 10 years on 5310, 5311 programs in North Carolina and has been with RLS and Associates for about 21 years now, so he is an excellent resource. He's currently working with the National RTAP on financial management manual and also cost allocation models with RTAP and with CTAA. So we are very fortunate to have him this morning to guide us.
Good morning, everyone. Normally I don't use a mic. I'm pretty loud. I've got a little bit of a raspy voice this morning. Hopefully with a little bit of coffee, my voice will return and you will not have to suffer for, 12 hours do we have on the agenda? We're going to cover a lot of ground. Our agenda for today, and we're going to go from 8 to 5. We're going to cover the role of something known as OMB in FTA grants management. We're going to talk about some document known as the Super Circular. We're going to talk about cost allowability principles, documentation of costs claimed under federal awards. We're going to talk about direct and indirect costs today, local match requirements, and we're going to close with the treatment of contract revenue under FTA grants, because we do things a little differently at FTA than anywhere else in the universe with respect to grants management. Tomorrow, we're going to cover things like how we can use donations and contributions in our federal grant awards. Those of you who have difficulty generating the local match to your FTA awards, this could be of great interest. We're going to talk about this concept of program income. What is it? What we do with it? We'll talk about some basic accounting materials, the chart of accounts, the accounting system, internal controls. I know I heard a handful of you are CFOs of your organization. The rest of you are either managers or transit managers. That's probably going to be the most boring portion of the next 12 hours. We'll talk about cash management, single audit, your responsibilities when you enter into an agreement with some other entity to provide all or part of your 5311 services, and then we'll finish with an open floor Q&A tomorrow just at lunchtime. We're going to start talking about OMB, and many of you are probably saying, oh my gosh, I came here to learn about FTA stuff, and this guy's going to go down this road on OMB. We don't get any money from OMB. Why do we need to be aware of any of their responsibilities and what their requirements are? Well, the fact of the matter is it's very germane to what we do at FTA. In effect, everything that FTA does is consistent with OMB requirements. For the last 30 years, since the late 1970s, OMB has played a prominent role in the grants management landscape, creating uniform procedures across the entire executive branch of the government, and that includes the U.S. Department of Transportation and the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the Department of Labor, etc. And one of the things I've learned in 43 years of transit is that nobody teaches the OMB stuff. It's essentially grants management 101, yet FTA has never in its history offered a class on OMB requirements. CTAA, how many expos have they had? Never one class. Yet, you are expected to know it. If I can use the college course analogy, this is the 101 course. Every everything else you've learned is in the 201 course, but no one teaches this. The primary reason is it's as boring as hell. No one else wants to risk their professional reputation on filling out those course evaluation scores. You know, that 1 to 5 scale, was the material relevant? How did the speaker do? Anybody who teaches this gets zeros and -1s. It's just the fact of life. This stuff isn't interesting. So I was thinking, I've been teaching this course a long time. How can I get your attention, get your interest in an otherwise boring material? So I started to open my presentation with the fact that this is the stuff that keeps you out of jail. And I looked around the room after I uttered those remarks, and I saw chuckle, maybe a little scowl. The speaker's being a little melodramatic, isn't he? Jail, who goes to jail managing a federal grant? And I took those comments to heart. I decided to take up a new hobby. Some of you may like to collect automobiles, antiques. I collect stories about rural transit managers who get debarred or indicted. Yeah, I'm a pretty sick person. I know there's something not right upstairs. And I'll show you what I affectionately call my wall of shame. And I have far too many people in my wall of shame. And the unfortunate thing is I know some of them personally. And in each case, their mistake can be traced back to their failure to comply with one of the requirements that we're going to talk about today and tomorrow. Now, in most cases, these folks did it willfully. It wasn't an ignorance of the rules. It was a purposeful attempt to violate the rules, and they thought they'd never get caught. That's like being a husband in a marriage who cheats. You always get caught. And the fact of the matter is you'll always get caught here, too. It may take a while, but you'll get caught. So it's critical that we understand these fundamental principles that OMB teaches us. There's a lot of slides. If you've seen the little number in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, we're going to cover a lot of ground. Long ago, when we teach in states like Oregon, Vermont, they don't want you to kill a lot of trees, printing out hundreds and hundreds of pages of PowerPoint presentation. So I have made this presentation available to you. Those of you who have smartphones, any type of tablet or laptop, we do have what appears to be pretty good Wi-Fi connectivity here in this room. And I believe it is a convention guest. There's no password. And if you want a copy of the PowerPoint, you can go to, this web address right here, www.rlsandasoc.com. Don't forget the andasoc, or you'll end up learning more than you'll ever want to know about restless leg syndrome. You'll come to a page that looks like this, and if you scroll down under areas of expertise, there's a little green button with a weird label, down upload site. And if you'll click on that, you'll be presented with a little screen that looks just like this. And if you'll type in g.transit as the username, and December 2018 is the password, you'll be taken to our FTP site, and I've put two products up there. One is the PowerPoint presentation, all 255 slides. And I've also put a copy of the Super Circular itself. But this isn't the copy that you download. If you Google 2 CFR Part 200 or the super circular, you're going to get taken to gpo.gov, the government printing office, and you're going to get the Federal Register. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm starting to get a little old. My eyesight isn't what it used to be. And reading, what does the Federal Register use? Like 4.5, 3 columns? It's a little difficult to read. Well, there's a company, it's a for-profit consulting company that specializes in grants management work, has taken the trouble of extracting from the Federal Register all of the text from the super circular, and they put it in 11.2 column font. And it's a little easier to read. So when I have to look up anything pertaining to the super circular, I don't go to my Federal Register copy, I go to my Maximus copy. And I'd highly recommend that you guys download that. Anybody who deals with $1 of federal grant funds needs to know what's in this document. You can't do your jobs properly unless you know what's in there. And hopefully by 12 o'clock tomorrow you will. But this is a user-friendly version. I've provided a copy. When you open the document, it'll look like this. Obviously, the company's doing a little self-promotion. I have no financial interest in Maximus, just by way of disclosure. But it is a cleaner copy of the super circular. I mentioned my wall of shame, just in case you thought I was making this up. Here's a little story about Mark McGregor from Virginia. You ever heard the expression, it couldn't happen to a nicer guy? And it said sarcastically. Well, this is kind of the situation we have here with Mark. Mark thought very highly of himself and did not believe that his board of directors was compensating him adequately for the job he did. He cut a deal with one of his maintenance vendors. You bill me 1.5 times the normal level A lube oil and filter check and send the invoice directly to me. We'll pay you your actual cost, and then you and I will split the difference above and beyond 1.0 cost of the level A check. He got away with this for 7 years. Then he made the mistake one day, hot political election at the local level in Northern Virginia, and he wrote a campaign contribution on transit system check letterhead and sent it to the guy running for county sheriff. Unbeknownst to Mark, the campaign finance officer for the sheriff was a county treasurer. He said, why am I getting a campaign contribution on a government check? And he called the State Bureau of Investigation, and they sort of did a little clandestine audit. And kind of like what we're reading in the papers this morning, the mechanic folded immediately and revealed everything. And you know you're going to have a bad day at work when you show up and the FBI has got your entire building wrapped in yellow crime scene tape. They came in and confiscated all the computers in the office, everything like that. My next one over here, let's see, I'll just give you a couple people that I know. Christina Ryder served as the finance officer for a county Department of Transportation for 20 years. Knew her stuff, the last person in the world you'd expect to do something illegal. She used federal assets to take out a loan. She encumbered an asset through a private bank, provided loans to her employees during the economic hard times in Northeast Ohio. Her system was up in the Cleveland area. She defaulted on the loan, and commissioners got wind of it. She did not go to jail. Commissioners just fired her and let her go. They didn't want the publicity. Now, this is an executive director of a community action agency. She did the same thing. She encumbered an FTA facility. Defaulted on the loan and the bank tried to take the facility. It took Ohio DOT 2 years with active involvement of FTA headquarter attorneys to keep the bank from getting that building where there was several $1 million of federal financial interest. And the list goes on and on and on. Some of these people went to jail. First two, Mark went to jail, Denise went to jail. I knew her as well. Good people, in part well-intentioned, and it just keeps going on up here in Maine. Woman I went to grad school with runs the transit program there. Her executive director embezzled almost $1 million. He got away with it because of a lack of internal controls within the organization. And we're going to talk about that tomorrow. So this can happen. This is important stuff you need to know. Now, obviously, nobody in this room is going to go out, is not here to learn how you can beat the system and embezzle money from GDOT. That's not why you're here. But you need to know, as managers and financial managers, it can happen to you if you're not alert, if you don't have the proper grants management procedures in place, or that you don't exercise the proper level of internal control over your management of federal grant funds. It can happen. And I know some of you are saying, no, we hire only good people, the good Christian people that go to church every Sunday. It doesn't happen to us. And I kind of believed that for a long time too when I was a program manager at North Carolina DOT. Then I went to a conference session up in Ohio when I first went to work for RLS. And the speaker worked for a company called Pros and Cons. The pros were CPAs and former CFOs of Fortune 100 companies. And they would talk about all the necessary tools you have to put in place in your organizations to prevent bad things from happening. Guess who, and you can probably guess, who the cons are. These were former CFOs who were convicted felons. And the moral, and a fascinating speech. These guys were ripping off folks like IBM for millions of dollars. They eventually all got caught and went to jail. And then this guy hired him to be on his speaker's panel. Fascinating presentation. And the moral of the story is, if you think it cannot happen to you, don't believe that for a minute. It can. You always have to be vigilant. So with that introduction, just a couple of rules of the road here during the course of the day. Since we're going to be here a long time, I don't see any coffee lined up along our hall. So I will take frequent breaks. If nothing else, to get a sip of coffee myself, try to soothe my sore throat. Get up, walk around anytime you want. You can ask questions anytime you want. Just raise your hand, I'll try to call on you. We'll take frequent breaks, as I mentioned. The only thing that I ask of you is to please turn your cell phones off, put them on vibrate. There's really nothing going on in the world that important that you have to be disturbed today. And you'll annoy your fellow guests, and then I'll just end up asking you every single question for the rest of the day, and I'll pick on you unmercifully throughout the remainder of the session. So you don't want that to happen. So for the courtesy to your fellow participants, please turn your cell phones off.